It's June 18th, and this is the evening commute edition of Mike and Bike. To start things off today, we're going to talk about taxes, and in particular, U.S. taxes for expatriates. For those of you unfamiliar with the vagaries of expatriate tax law for American citizens, America is one of the few countries on earth, I actually heard there may only be two that do this, where its citizens who live abroad are required to still pay income tax. So in the case where an American citizen moves to another country, is working in that other country, earning an income in that other country, and no longer even resides in America, they are still required to both file for income tax in the United States, as well as pay income tax. And this law has been on the books for quite a long time. And however, until recently, it hasn't been enforced. And there's also been some recent laws that have extended the issue of expatriate taxation, and in particular put requirements on foreign banks to help bring Americans into foreign or expatriates into compliance with U.S. tax law that has created bigger problems. So why are we talking about this today? Because frankly, this whole issue of expatriate taxation is something that really bothers me. I think it's absurd. I mean, it's one thing to try to catch tax cheats or people trying to siphon their money into foreign channels, but for people who don't even live abroad, it's absurd for people who don't even live in America, it's absurd to force them to pay taxes in this country on money they didn't even earn here. Hello. So back to tax law. It is absurd to be charging or to require Americans living abroad to pay taxes to the U.S. on income that they earn overseas. And more to the point, recently, an increasing number of American citizens have simply decided to renounce their U.S. citizenship so they don't have the hassles and expense of U.S. taxation when they live abroad. Worse, it's almost getting to the point where you need to renounce your U.S. citizenship if you're an American and wish to live abroad for an extended period. What's happening now is that increasing numbers of banks are refusing, increasing numbers of foreign banks are refusing to take American customers. If you're an American in France and want to get a bank account or checking account for just normal life and transactions, there are some banks that won't take you as a customer anymore. And every week it seems there's more banks, international banks, that refuse to take American customers. And the reason why is that America, some recent legislation in the last 10 years recent American legislation has required that foreign banks that do business with the US, which almost all banks of any size do, must report on the accounts for any American citizens that they have as customers. Even if these American citizens don't live in the US, even if the accounts aren't in US dollars, the US government requires that they report on this. And so there's a lot of banks are deciding that the hassles of having to report on the accounts of American citizens is too burdensome and too much of a hassle to deal with, and they would rather just not have the customers. Now, this may be just for low-income customers. For the super wealthy, they might not mind the reporting requirements. Might be worth their while, but for, a middle-class person who just has a job in Switzerland, working as an engineer or something, making 120K or something like this, your business may not be lucrative enough for that Swiss bank to take you on as a customer. The message that this sends to Americans is that if you want to live abroad, you better renounce your U.S. citizenship. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal today about a woman in Canada who's lived there for 40 some years, and now she's going to have to, she's just with modest incomes and means, she owes income tax on the gains of her retirement accounts, Canadian retirement accounts. And the Canadian retirement accounts are tax-free investment vehicles similar to in the US. But you owe, if you're an American expat, you owe taxes on that. There is an exemption for expats for up to 100,000 US in income. But it's not that hard to exceed it, and particularly when things like retirement income are included. And there's also requirements, regardless of your income, to file reports for every bank account and financial account that you have, even if it's not your income. So if you have a joint account with a husband or a spouse who isn't an American citizen, and you're the expat, a US citizen, you have to report on those joint accounts. And that's kind of unconscionable that the US government is monitoring the income of your spouse who isn't an American citizen and has no requirement of paying US taxes. And the penalties for not reporting these things are enormous. You can end up with a tax bill and just in penalties for not reporting these bank accounts that is just extraordinary. And if you haven't been reporting for a number of years, a decade or more, it can add up to serious change. So the whole thing, as I said in the outset, is absurd. But I mean, the way it is, the way the laws are, and the way they're enforcing them, it really does seem as if they don't want their citizens living, the US doesn't want its citizens living abroad. And they're saying, hey, stay at home, or if you leave, just tear up your passport. But I find it hard to believe that those laws were made with that intent. I mean, it could just be unintended consequences of policies that goes back a long time. And like I said earlier, apparently these laws of expat taxation weren't enforced until relatively recently. So many expats went decades without ever filing a US tax return, even though technically they were required to by law. Now, if all of this isn't bad enough, even the people who want to be in compliance and are willing to file and say, hey, sure, I'll file my US tax returns even though I don't live in the US or earn an income in the US, the filings are very complicated. You can't just use simple off-the-shelf tax software to prepare your expat tax return. You usually have to hire multiple accountants to get the job done. People who have expertise in US tax law, and then people who have expertise in your foreign tax law in the country where you are. And it's very complicated to file these taxes. And even just filing the forms, reporting your accounts that you're required to do isn't trivial. So the US makes it burdensome even for those who want to be in compliance with this law. So the whole thing is just crazy. Unfortunately, I don't see an easy way to fight it. It's not something that would ever become a political hot button. There's relatively few votes to be had by pushing this as an issue for any politician. I mean, who's going to vote for this? The expats don't vote. They're not allowed to. Hello? Is there a concert today?
There is.
Who's playing?
Fray?
The Fray.
The Fray.
Yeah. Don't know him.
I don't know him either. This traffic kind of controls itself.
Yeah. Good? Yeah, it's concert days that I'm glad that I commute on my bike, because sometimes the traffic gets really backed up when they've got concerts. And
That's the big fear.
yeah.
I'm gonna guess this next 30 minutes when everybody's taking off.
Yeah.
Although you do take your life in your hands, sitting here on the corner.
Yeah. I know. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
So that's your friendly neighborhood Redmond policeman. So I'm taking my life in my hands. I'm standing at a corner. Yeah. Oh. So back to taxes. As I was saying, it seems futile to try to fight these laws for taxation of American expats. It's just the type of thing that likely there's no percentage in it. There's no real benefit. Oh, great, I'm getting a phone call. I have to get that. Hello. Yeah, hi. I'm just biking home. What? Okay. 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 Okay, so I've got to tell Jawad to cancel our insurance then. Okay. And are they setting up an HSA account for you? Do you have that under? Okay. Sure. I'll write her an email tonight. Okay, bye. So that was just a call from my wife telling me that we're going to be able to get the health insurance from her company. So that's a good thing. Just always paperwork that goes on to make things happen. So tax is a game, and the futility in fighting them for American expats. So I'm kind of depressed about the ability for expats to fight these taxes, because they don't constitute much of a voting bloc, and they just don't vote very much. The U.S. law doesn't even allow them to vote. The only Americans living abroad who can vote are those who are employed by the government. So you're working in an embassy, State Department, or you're in the military. And those people don't have these problems because they're paid by the U.S. anyway. So I don't think they're subject to, they don't hit any of these issues of expat incomes. So yeah, so it leaves us with a quandary. Oh, worse, I think one of the reasons these laws persist on expat taxation is that it is convenient to nail some Americans who are trying to evade taxes. gives the government a nice hook to get at them. But why they've started really enforcing it on just normal people who don't have big incomes and stuff in recent years is kind of a conundrum to me. That would seem to indicate that maybe they're just trying to get money wherever they can, and they know they can get it from expats, so go for it, go to it. I mean, this leads me to a broader subject of income tax altogether. And to be honest, I've never really been a fan of income taxes, period. I don't really think they're the most effective of taxes. And I would prefer to have them just abolished, not just flat tax, just have no income tax. Now, I'm not someone to go so far as some libertarians to say there just shouldn't be any taxes, but I think it makes more sense to have consumption taxes, where you pay taxes on the things you buy. And I'd be willing to have even huge consumption taxes, and maybe even entertain progressive consumption taxes. So for the greater the cost of the thing you're buying, the higher the tax possibly. So you buy $1 million house, you could pay 20-30% of that in taxes or something. I'd be much more into that than taxing income. In other words, tax people when they spend their money, not when they make it. Because you don't want to discourage people from making money. The more money people make, the better it is for the economy. You want people to do the jobs that create the maximum value, where their skills and interests are the most valued. So encourage that to the max. Don't tax it. But heck, I'm all for taxing them when they go and they buy stuff with their money. And if people want to keep their money in the bank and gain interest on it, that's good too. Don't tax that. Don't tax them on their investment income or interest income. Let them earn every single penny that they can on that. That encourages people to invest more and to save more, which are also good for the economy. Heck, I don't even mind like 50% taxes on purchasing goods, a sales 50%, 60% sales tax. That's fine with me. I don't like the idea of having consumption tax, of making some things exempt from consumption taxes. Like sometimes they try to make food exempt and certain types of food and things like this. No, I think I'd prefer to see it a simpler system where it's across the board taxes, maybe just a progressive tax based on the price value of the money spent on an item. You spend $10,000 or $20,000 on a car, you pay much lower tax rate than if you buy a $100,000 car. That kind of thing. So this is the hardest part of the ride, the commute. Going the long, slow incline heading home. Looks like our rainy weather isn't over yet. Ominous clouds in the horizon. No activity or significant activity at the Buddhist temple today. I don't smell any incense either. Sometimes I swear you can smell the incense blocks away. They must have some big ceremonies or festivals where they just burn pounds and pounds of the stuff. Guess I'll try to stick on the topic of taxes. I used to go to accountants or tax accountants to do my taxes in the US, but about 5 or 6 years ago I started doing them all myself, and I don't regret it. Kind of started doing my own taxes, I think partly because I was a little broke at the time when I was unemployed. But I also had come to the conclusion that I was pretty much, having to do my taxes even when the accountants were doing them. In order for the accountant to do my taxes, I had to make sure everything was in order and understand all my own finances. So I was inputting everything into TurboTax and calculating it all myself before I even gave it to the accountants. And after doing that for a few years and seeing that what they came up with was exactly the same as what my TurboTax did, I started thinking, well, what's the point? I can do this myself. And it's cheaper just paying for the software instead of the paying for the accountant. And then in the last couple of years, I started a little business that I run doing some marketing consulting work. And I've been using QuickBooks, some online accounting software to do the bookkeeping for my business, which adds a little more complexity to filing my taxes. And I find that it's very helpful for me to do all my taxes for that too. So I understand everything that's going on. It's always a big pain in the neck to do my tax filings. It takes several days of constant work. But I actually feel pretty good about it when I'm done. But there are a lot of insanities in the tax system. This year I found a very bizarre situation that stumped me for a while, where when I completed my taxes, the final result was telling me that here is my income, and here is my deductions. It said, here's the value for your income for the year. Here's your value of all the deductions that you qualify for. And it said, here is the total refund you're going to get, because I paid more in taxes than I owed, but I was getting back less in a refund than if you just subtracted my deductions from the amount that I owed according to the printout. It took me quite a while to understand that, in research, to figure out that some of the deductions don't count for refunds. They can reduce the amount of tax you owe, but the government won't pay you back if your refund exceeds a certain amount. So they'll say, oh, for this kind of thing, we'll only refund a certain percentage or a certain dollar value. And if we owe you more than that, we just won't pay it. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And damn confusing too, when you're trying to do your taxes. And you'd think simple math would tell you if you're paying the right amount. But no. It doesn't work like that. And this concludes our tax edition of the Mike and Bike Commute. See you all next time.